Welcome to Saints on Cinema. I'm Tim Wilde, and Zach is here tonight. And
Hi,
we
everybody.
are once again going to dive into the world of Mandalorian as we have just finished season 2 of the greatest thing to happen to Star Wars since Rogue One. That's what I'm going to say.
You see my shirt?
Yes.
I wore this just for you tonight.
I'm not arguing. I'm just explaining why I'm right. But I don't think we have a lot to contest with each other this time.
Maybe not, but I'll find something.
I think we may have some a little bit with a certain character. I think there may be a little bit, but we're not gonna dwell too much on some of the plot line. And anyone has anything to say about the finale of Mandalorian, there is nothing but content all over YouTube. If you want to hear a lot of exposition and video essays and diagnosis and analysis. That's
analysis. Diagnosis.
Diagnosis is what we had to do to The Last Jedi. That's what we
Yeah, that's right.
But it's been revived, and we have an analysis of the future of Star Wars and the revival thereof. But we'll get to that. But last time we talked, Zach and I talked about episodes, whatever it was. You can check our other video if you didn't already see it.
It was the first 5 episodes of the season.
So 9 through 13. So we were a little bit past the halfway mark, and right before the reveal of Mr.
Right before things got crazy.
Yeah, and I'm kind of glad it worked that way because we finished right after Ahsoka. Can you imagine trying to dive into Ahsoka and Luke in the same episode? Spoilers, too late.
Yeah, I can't believe if you're not keeping up with the show because, yeah, that was such a huge spoiler. You better have watched it.
I don't know anyone can have social media and not know it right now. It's like finding out that Baby Yoda existed.
Right.
Season.
How can you not spoiler that for people? Like, everyone was talking about it. So.
Yeah. I heard that, like, in the UK or whatever, they didn't have The Mandalorian for, like, another month or something. They were all pissed off because of America's social media, they knew all about it. I can't even imagine how
that's what happens when you have freedom.
Yeah. But we have a nice little package of episodes here. We have 3 episodes to discuss, episodes 14 through 15, which is a little story arc. It's really simple. It goes straightforward. They're not like individual little events that happen like the first little bit of the series. So we're just going to kind of go through this little story, chronological. We're not going to break it down, scene by scene or anything, but just kind of like what happens. And I want to know what Zach felt about some of it. I talked a little bit with you, Zach, about some things about about Boba Fett. Not much. So I was going to save it. But holy cow, did I want to talk to some Star Wars friends about what was going on. I talked to my brother, but Josh and Ashley, they're not into it. Ashley watched the first season. She hasn't watched this season, so we couldn't even do anything in the show. And I was like, I just want to talk about this. So thank you, Zach, for taking your time.
You're welcome. I'm glad I can be a token nerd for you.
Exactly. All right. So episode 14 is the episode where when Ahsoka met Grogu. I'm gonna try so hard to just not Grogu. Excuse me. Let me write it down. Grogu. I'm trying to create the habit because as I've heard people talk about it since the name was released. There's appreciation for the character using the proper name, not Baby Yoda, because it never was Yoda. That was all an audience name.
Right. That was a meta name we put on.
Yeah. As I understand, even in the notes with the cast on the script and everything, it was always referred to as, even in the studio, as the child. It was never
the child,
called anything but Grogu, no Ku, even though he coos constantly. Grogu. So Grogu was told that he was a Jedi from the Temple as an infant, even though he's 50, and sent to he was carried away by someone before Order 66 or whatever. He survived the execution and the purge, and then Ahsoka said, "Hey, I can't train him. I've seen him. He has fear, and I've seen that go wrong too many times, or at least one major time with Anakin. I'm not gonna be involved. But if you take him to this OE temple, put him on the focusing the skybeam rock, then some other Jedi may pick up the Force signal, right?" That was what his message was. So instantly, I didn't think we were going to get there the very next scene, but first part of the next episode,
I remember you saying, I think it's going to be like the last episode of the season. And right away, they're all like, yep, we're here. And I was shocked, too, because they almost always introduce some episode in between. But the filler episode was actually episode 15, which we'll get to. That was more filler than anything, but it did have progression. But anyways.
Yeah. And I really thought they were going to go have an incident happen, go on with the taking care of the Darksaber stuff, and then at the end, the epilogue was going to be a Jedi shows up at the Rock and they've all gone.
Right.
To reveal like who it was. No, they did way better than that. So they go up at the Rock, and then all of a sudden, and it's not nostalgia. The second that Slave One breaks atmosphere and flies through the sky, that was the most beautiful shot, the most beautiful thing. Even when Boba Fett arrives, big spoiler, Boba Fett, the man. This is my whatever that game.
Oh, hey, I had that one for the
Awesome.
Disney game.
Infinity, Disney Infinity.
Yeah, Disney
right?
Infinity.
My kids have like most of those characters. This is one I bought for me. It's a cool little cute sculpt, and the Darth Vader one. The rest they can have. Anyway, I had to buy a duplicate of that for me to have that one for my shelf. Anyway, so Boba Fett shows up in Slave One. I was just so excited because to see it like not in space, and not blasting off. It's beautiful on like Cloud City and stuff like that. But to see Slave One take off or just fly in like in action or just like casually just flying in, I was like, that is so cool because it looks so good in that clean 4K. It's just beautifully shot. Comes and lands. I was like, okay, one, how did he get the Slave One? Like, I can't imagine what would have happened, which made me think of two things. One, we talked last time, how long was he in the Sarlacc pit before he climbed out? We talked about that at the beginning of the season. So it makes me think it was not too long because I can't imagine Slave One, wherever he parked it, probably at Jabba's palace, according to old canon, where he parked it there, that after the barge blew up, if he was in Sarlacc for a long time, that thing would have been picked and raided a long time ago. We're just stolen. So I think he got out relatively early and has been just hanging out on Tatooine. But again, if he went back and got a ship early, then why was he still on Tatooine? So I'm really excited about them explaining some of this.
I do want to hear the explanation because I don't know. I mean, it may be that he got out, but his armor got raided or whatever, and so he was sticking around to try and find his armor, right?
Yeah.
And so maybe he had the ship the whole time, or maybe he was working on fixing the ship after it had been pulled apart, a lot like the Mandalorian.
Maybe he got raped by the
maybe he did get raided, and he's been there for a while patching it up. Like, maybe. Who knows? But I'm sure they're going to start digging into some of that. Spoiler alert, they announced another spin-off series.
Of Boba Fett. And I want that series to go back to the Sarlacc pit. I don't want it just to start right there. I want to go back and like catch us up for a couple of chapters to what happened and then pick up from where he's on the throne and go forward. Here's my theory, what I think would work. After he got out, I think he was taken in by Tusken Raiders, kind of like the Lone Ranger taken in by Tonto's people kind of thing and revived. Mm-hmm. And that's why he had their gear and he learned to survive in the desert. And then he finally tracked down where his armor went and observed what happened with the Mandalorian, watched the fight watched the battle
assassin
with the
lady.
Maybe I bet he came upon her. I don't know how, because those same Tusken Raiders were in that episode. And if he came upon them, because they're the same ones that had if I remember from what I heard, that one of the Easter eggs is that the micro binoculars they were looking in was the ones that he bartered with in season 1 when he gave him passage.
Yeah.
So if those were the same Tusken Raiders that were in the incidents in the first one, the assassin Boba Fett, if he was a friend of theirs or whatever, or at least had rite of passage with them, they may have told him about what happened because they probably observed the whole thing, just didn't care. And then he would probably talk to her, revived her, whatever, and then gained her as an ally. And then finding out where his armor was, takes off with the Mandalorian, goes back and gets his ship and tries to follow. But how did he know where he goes? That's my thing. I don't understand. There was no clue as where he was going from that point. But that doesn't matter. Okay, so that was the thing.
He is a bounty hunter, right? Who knows? It may have been that he went to the planet where Ahsoka was and was all like, "Hey, where did they go?" And they're all like, "Oh, they went to Tython." Who knows?
Right.
It's not impossible, but at the same time, they didn't really explain it. I mean, there's a few things in this show that they sort of just gloss over. Like, even in the first season, I feel like there was more this season, but in the first season when they're all like, nothing can travel over this landscape but these creatures, and then you see the landscape and you're like,
no,
or literally anything, you mean? Including the creatures? Is that what you meant?
And those creatures are like probably the worst things that you'd want to try to cross.
Right.
With those things. It's like a speeder bike. I mean, and all those goons were there. I mean, they didn't.
Including that droid, because then I think I remember talking about it. The droid in the first season shows up, the assassin droid. My wife's shushing me, but I'm in the middle of the podcast. The droid shows up, the assassin droid shows up, and it's like, well, how did he get here? did he ride one of those creatures in? Or
well, his whole body like spins. He probably just rode right in. Yeah.
But the only way to get through is one of those creatures.
So he had to learn how to ride it in one scene because that was his ancient Mandalorian culture to do so and ride dinosaurs. Anyway, okay. So whatever. Boba Fett shows up on the planet. What Typhoon? What is it?
Tython.
Python.
Ancient Jedi planet. In the Old Republic, the MMO video game, actually it's in the Knights of the Old Republic video game too. You go and meet the Jedi Council there, and you train to become a Jedi, and there's stuff there. And it's in the Old Republic game. It's where you go, and they have an old Jedi temple, and you learn to become a Jedi. So that used to be the home of like the Jedi.
Right.
Way back in the day. So that era is like 3,000 to 4,000 years before the current storyline. So
they didn't show a temple in the episode, right? Just the rock.
Well, and yeah, I'm wondering if that's the top of the temple or maybe it's just a remnant of the temple, but who knows? But yeah.
So he goes to the rock, puts Baby Yoda on, and he starts doing this weird channeling thing. Then Boba Fett shows up because he can't interact with Baby Yoda or Grogu. He can't do anything. He can't take him. He can't penetrate this weird force energy shield, whatever it is, this ray. So he has to go deal with Boba Fett himself. Boba Fett comes out, and I only saw it once, and you have to remind me if I missed anything important. He comes out, and they don't start fighting each other, right? It's not until the Imperials show up. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't think they fight each other. He just says, hey, the armor belongs to me. And he's all like, you're not a Mandalorian. But they don't resolve it. They start the conversation. Yeah. Then they have the fight. Which, by the way, that episode was directed by Robert Rodriguez. And that's why you can get away with some of the cheesy action that was in it.
Action, that was awesome.
Some of it was awesome. But, like, there's the one where the assassin girl is running across the rocks while they're shooting at her. And I'm like, I can see where if you just went behind the rocks, they wouldn't be able to shoot at you. But no, you're running on top of the rocks. But
yeah. Well, I loved when those two drop ships came and just deployed troops, and just two squads came out. I was like, that is so awesome. And then they took off. Like, they just like, hey, you're here. Whoop.
Yeah, they're like,
they left. And then they waited for the third one, and that reminded me of the beginning of Force Awakens and how cool it was to have the drop ships come and just start the attack, and then later Kylo Ren's ship came in after they start, where it's a little more secure.
Right.
They did
set up a perimeter. Yeah.
That was really cool to watch that, and then they took it out. Boba Fett does his damage with the gaffy stick and stuff like that. Really good stuff, and then disappears all of a sudden. Mandalorian's like, where'd he go? And he looks at the ship, and the door's open, and then bam, all of a sudden he appears in his Boba Fett garb, a few sizes too small now, but he's in his garb on top of the black desert robes. What did you think, Zach?
Well, I mean, you alluded to what my thoughts were. I actually think it was lazy design. They're all like, we'll just put a robe on him because he's kind of chubby, and it'll be cool because it's a robe, and he's got the armor over the robe now. And I'm just like, I'm sorry, this just looks kind of lazy. I wasn't that impressed.
Do you think it looked cool besides the size fit?
I think conceptually it looks cool.
Kind of like a kilt kind of a style with armor?
Yeah, it's okay. We'll see what happens. Maybe they'll get him into shape before next year, and it'll look better. We'll see. But I'm a big pudgy guy, so I can't blame him.
Well, dude, he had a lot of great chemistry with Nicole Kidman in the Aquaman movie, so I'm not gonna rip on him for not being an attractive guy. Hey, Whoever can pull that up, that's great. Anyway, I thought it looked cool as an idea for like if Boba Fett was visiting like a desert planet or something where that the robes would kind of fit. I thought it was kind of a cool option as a style, but I didn't think it was like better than his original garb. I'm really curious now that he's back on Tatooine if he's going to keep that kind of a style or if he's going to go back to his old stuff. His old stuff, the spacesuit with the tan pants and stuff, that's a little more functional for a bounty hunter jumping in and out of a ship, getting into space battles and stuff on space adventures than like running around in a robe. But running around on a desert planet makes sense.
Everyone wears robes in this universe, so everyone has a cloak. So maybe, I don't know. We'll see what they do with him as he establishes himself. If you remember, the Mandalorian's character and including his armor was sort of built over time. So
yeah. Tales of the Jedi, the old Dark Horse comics in the old canon, they used to wear really cool clothing that was like kind of like samurai robe like kind of stuff too. It was kind of in style with that, even though he's not a Mandalorian. Anyway, so Boba Fett comes in, then he starts using his gear. My brother comments on this. He had his darts, he shot his little knee missiles and stuff, and a lot of cool stuff. He didn't shoot his flamethrower, and my brother suspected that was because we've seen Mandalorian use his flamethrower so many times they didn't want to like just do that again. But I was like, who cares? He used it in Return of the Jedi, so I mean, why not? Now, my thought about that... He uses
his back rocket, though.
Yes, he did. And what's funny about that is, do you remember, the story about the action figure, the original Boba Fett action figure?
Oh, gosh. I remember something about that, but tell me.
It's the most rare Star Wars toy because the original production had a back missile that shot. And so the toy it wasn't just a cool looking, jetpack, it was actually a firing missile.
It actually shot.
The toy actually shot, but I think it was either a G.I. Joe toy or something, whatever it was. Star Wars came out before G.I. Joe, but whatever. There was another toy or something that they decided was too hazardous, so they had like 80 or something that were pre-produced or whatever.
Yeah, that's right.
And they stopped it, changed the backpack, and then made the Boba Fett toy. But those original 80 that have a firing missile, some collectors have them, and they're worth a freaking crazy amount of money. So, but for him to have that missile, that's canon. That's an old Easter egg. But no, I was gonna say with his using all of his gear, my thought was he was just so excited after all these years to jump into his suit. He just wanted to play with all his toys.
I'm using everything. I can totally see that.
That still works. That still works. I didn't like how the shot or the range on the missile took out both ships. I thought that was a little much, but whatever. It's Boba Fett. You got to give him.
He blew up the one and it
crashed into the other.
Crashed into the other, right? Yeah.
It was kind of like Rogue One when they took out the one Star Destroyer with the runner, and then it crashed into the Star Destroyer. I was like, and that was cool, but this was a little too much. Anyway, all right. Here's my question for you, Zach. We've seen Boba Fett do some awesome stuff. That was his main thing, other than doing some sniping stuff in the next episode. No, he didn't even snipe. He wasn't even really doing anything. He was flying the ship. He does some cool space combat stuff in the next 2 episodes. Was this episode, because now everyone loves Boba Fett. For years, in the last decade, I've been hearing people say that Boba Fett is overhyped. He didn't do anything awesome in the movies, and it's just everyone says his character is just that he looks cool, and that really makes me mad. Just like people that say Darth Maul's character in the movies is just that he has a double-bladed lightsaber. I kind of understand that, but Boba Fett is so much more to me as a character than just he's nothing but looked cool in a uniform. Do you agree with that, or do you think this episode revived him and revitalized him, or made him relevant again to an audience that was like, he didn't do anything before, but now that he's done this stuff, we can appreciate him. I think that's all a bunch of crap.
No, I think it's done a lot for him. You actually get to see him being awesome. I think there's moments for him in the original movies, but you don't see him just fight a bunch of people and take them all out in the original movies. You see him kind of interact in that battle on Jabba's
sail barge.
Yeah.
And
that's about it. And so I think just John Favreau and Dave Filoni, we're going to talk about this more later too. They're just taking these characters and like, people want to see these characters being awesome. Let's let them experience them being awesome instead of constantly subverting expectations and making moral points and trying to, add nuance to the story. That's fine, but also let them just be awesome. And I think that's what they did with Boba Fett.
Right. I think, and I agree with you, and we got to see him do all the stuff that we've heard about him being able to do, but we've never seen him fire off all those toys, including shooting an ion gun in the last episode, taking out a ship with his ion cannon and then like coming up on it. I was like, that's Boba Fett, and the Slave One is decked out. That's why it's a little bit slower of a ship. It is decked out with all that kind of stuff, and then in the mines, when he shot the sonic mine and the
sonic mine was really cool to see, because you see it in episode 2, but he's going to get it's Jango against a Jedi, and you're just like, oh, that's devastating. But of course, the Jedi just dodges it. So you see him use it practically in this episode, where it works, right? Yeah. Where it works the way it's supposed to, when you're not going against a Jedi Master.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
Xbox had a Clone Wars game. I think it's the Clone Wars game. I can't remember which one it was. Or maybe it was a Rogue Squadron game. I can't remember what it was, but you got to use those missiles. You just shoot those bombs, and that was like my favorite thing to do in that game. Maybe it was a Rogue Squadron game where you find, I think you do. There's a battle over Geonosis. You go down, you find Obi-Wan's red starfighter that he parked before he got captured. You actually find it, and then you fly off and you continue the mission, and you get to shoot those bombs. They're so cool. I love that sound. It's such a cool weapon. Anyway. That's all nostalgia, but let me say this. I got Jeremy Bullock, who played Boba Fett, just died this last week. And as I was, when I went to Comic-Con a few years ago here in Salt Lake, and he was there, and there wasn't a big line of people, and I was excited to go meet him. And I don't go up and meet a lot of the celebrities there. Just because it's a weird interaction to have with people, to pay them for their attention, But as Jeremy Bullock, I was like, this is amazing. I met him and I talked to him for a few minutes, and as he signed my picture and everything, I got to ask him about how much, because I've always loved Boba Fett, and it's not just because he looks cool. I love every subtle little thing he does. His nod in Jabba's palace after the Bausch pulls up the thermal detonator, he like gives his nod of approval and stuff like that. Like those little things say so much to me about the character. But I asked him how much of that was him versus how much was the direction, and he said, I went up to, what's the guy's name, the director of Empire, whatever it is. You have to look it up. But he went up and talked to him. He just died this last decade. Kirshner? Is it Kirshner?
Irvin Kirshner.
Yeah. So he went up. He said, I don't think this character isn't like a jump out and get attention kind of a guy. He said when he comes out, he should be so cool and so confident that he just has to nod. He doesn't need to come out and say, I'm Boba Fett. These are his words. He doesn't come out and say, I'm Boba Fett, and like be all bad and threatening and everything in your face. Kind of like Greedo or other people, He just is there, and that's enough. He's all reputation. He's just really cool. When I say cool, I don't mean like cool. I mean he's really just really
right.
Really, you know what I mean?
He's composed.
Absolutely,
extremely composed.
And that's all he needs to do. So when he steps out in different moments, you see that coolness. When he's walking with the Imperials taking Leia or taking Han to the ship, when Luke's kind of following the parade. When he stops and he turns just slightly, he knows he's there. They go around the corner, and then he turns around and pops a couple of shots. When they're like, he didn't do anything, he takes a couple of shots and he fires that close to Luke's head, and Luke dodges behind the wall. Guess what? That's Darth Vader's prize, and if he hits Luke, he's toast. You know what I mean? You don't think about that. He wasn't necessarily trying to hit Luke, but he couldn't make it look too fake. He is so accurate. He shot the wall that close to his face twice, and they're like, "Hey, this is good.
That's interesting.
We're escaping." Gets out there. He's like, load him on. Even when they were being pursued by a Jedi, he didn't know for sure if Luke took the bait, went to the carbon train or carbon freezing center, if he was following him. He gets out there. He's just like, put him in the cargo bay or whatever. He's just so. I'm not even worried about it. He's so awesome. In the West End Games role-playing game, they had a bunch of short stories when they talked about the movies, and they had a story where this isn't canon, but it's just fascinating. When Luke was fighting the Rancor, Boba Fett leaned over and placed bets with Tessek, the guy with the tentacles on his face, betting on if Luke would survive or not. If I remember, and he won that bet. He's like, Luke's going to take this thing out. Like, he was so smart. And the other theory is, why was he still at Jabba's palace? He got the reward. He brought Han Solo in. He knew Luke was going to come looking for him. He was like, that's going to be a better bounty. I'm going to wait it out for him. He's not Jabba's little guy that just does whatever he
errand boy or whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is why I hated seeing him in A New Hope, because why is he hanging out with all the other thugs? But whatever. But I mean, little things like that, his nodding at Bow, it's like just those little things. He jumped out on the ship the second Luke went into action. He's like, this is my shot. And before anyone else gets a straight shot or a lucky hit, I'm going to go take him out, I love that. Yes, he gets taken out with a punk when Solo hits the jetpack, whatever. And I don't like the idea that he had a faulty jetpack, because Boba Fett was like one of the richest bounty hunters there was. He can afford to fix the jetpack or get a new one, but whatever. I mean, there's just a lot of
that was George Lucasing things. I think I love Return of the Jedi, but there are moments in it where you can kind of see where things in the prequels went wrong. Like, there's just little moments where you're like, okay, there was, when you're not fully constrained, you go way off into the night. You need George Lucas needs a little constraint. And I think Return of the Jedi, he had made 2 movies, one of them considered the best movie of all time. And they're like, yeah, sure, do whatever you want for Return of the Jedi. And that's where you see little moments like that where it's like, well, why?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think Boba Fett gets the respect that he deserves from the movies, let alone all the outside canon that just makes him even more amazing. That this, I don't think, was needed to make him better. And I just roll my eyes at people, just like people that discover Cobra Kai 2 years later. If you think Boba Fett's cool now, but you didn't before, it was pearls before swine. That's what I always say on this show. Even when you first meet him, and that he figured out the trap where Han would go. He figured all that stuff out. He followed him there. He beat him there. And the other thing where he was the only one bold enough to square up to Vader when Vader was like changing. He's like, what if he doesn't survive? He's worth a lot to me. He wasn't right there. He was taking ownership of what's
whereas Lando was basically just like
cowering out.
Oh, fine, you're changing the deal. Okay.
What are you gonna do with it? But even when Vader is talking to the bounty hunters, we'll move off this right now, but when Boba Fett's talking to the bounty hunters, giving them the job, he stops and he says, no disintegration. He stops and looks right at Boba Fett. No disintegrations. Why did he say that? Because he knows that he can do some damage. He has a reputation. He says, I want him alive. And he looks specifically at Fett. You, no disintegrations. You know what I mean? He doesn't have to say to IG-88, hey, don't do your twirling guns and kill him. But he knows that this guy can do it, there's just so much coolness about Boba Fett that this just you got to see him play with all of his toys. That was awesome. But I've always been passionate about Boba Fett, for reading between the lines and seeing more than just a guy that the flamethrower didn't work out, the rope didn't work out, whatever.
Well, I think it's just, this is a long line of characters, to be honest, well, not a long line, but just that Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau and these guys are just like, let's make him cool. Let's take Ahsoka and let's have her do some awesome stuff in the live action film. And let people, they didn't take her and undermine her character and make her dumb. They took Boba Fett and like, let's let him have his moment to shine, and let's not, ruin everything about the character. Let's have it be cool. And then the great grand one, which we'll get to.
We can move on from that one. But Boba Fett in action. I forget her name, the sniper girl. Her name is
Wen.
What was it?
Zena Wen, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, some Star Wars name that's cool. I loved her in the first season when they brought her.
Well, and even in the first season, I was like, oh man, I hope she comes back. I'm sad that she got pegged. Hopefully that guy's doing something with her, and he did. He gave her cybernetic replacement. I actually like this universe because it's like, you can be convinced someone is dead, but then if they get cybernetics and future technology, there's actually a reason for them to be back, right? It's not like, Oh, basically magic. Of course, there's magic in this universe too. But I mean,
yeah. There's religion, science, and magic. It all fits. It's everything.
There's multiple ways that people can actually come back, and it's within universe. And I'm glad she came back, and I think she was a fan favorite, so I think people were all down for that.
And if Rian Johnson was directing this series, they would have brought her back and just to make a joke out of her and kill her off doing something stupid like falling into a Starlight Pit. Anyway, the last thing that happened in that episode was the Dark Trooper reveal. Oh no, that wasn't the reveal. That was when they first came down. When they flew down, and you got to see them just reach in into the shield that Mandalorian couldn't even get into, pull them out and just fly off. That was pretty cool. I mean, I was already excited because I love the Dark Forces game. I didn't play through all those games, but I played through several of them because once you get Kyle Katarn as a Jedi, it's not as fun as when he's just a shooter or an ex-stormtrooper. But the introduction of the Dark Troopers in the Dark Empire series was freaking awesome. You got to watch them go through those stages, which is what I love when they talk about them in the series. They talk about how this is their stage 3, and now they're droids. They got rid of their last weakness being the human pilots or whatever, the suit wearers. That they were like, they're now perfected as pretty much Terminators, and everyone's describing that way. That's what they are. It was really cool to see them. Then they just fly back up to the ship. I just want to know, how do they fly up into orbit with with Grogu just wearing his tunic, not in a suit? Maybe they went into another dropship. I don't remember where they flew into.
I don't know. You'll see this in the Clone Wars cartoon, but there's times when they're just like, they just press a button and a mask comes over and they can go into space.
Grogu wearing baby robes.
I don't know. Who knows? I'm just saying there's random stuff in this universe.
Hey, I love Superman, and Superman 4 has several humans flying up in space, so whatever. It is what it is. All right, that's the end of that one. Moving quickly. So the next episode, they go back, pick up. We got to go track down the ship with Gideon. And so they go back and get what's her name that I'm still not a big fan of. I'm fine with the character. I just don't care for how she's being played. And they get what's her name, who's now a marshal. And maybe you can explain this to me. She's a marshal on that one planet with Apollo Creed. And then they go back and take out Bill Burr's character out of prison, where he's just like Lex Luthor, just smashed.
Yeah, I felt like that was kind of forced. It was fine. I also feel like this episode was mostly filler, and I actually think it undermined the final episode a little bit. Yeah. And I'll tell you how. So yeah, they use her credentials as part of the rebellion to find out where he is and get him transferred out, essentially, because they need him for his imperial knowledge and connections, I guess. But which ultimately didn't matter, because he didn't even do what they brought him there to do, except maybe understand Imperial protocol. But the Mandalorian ends up, in the end, to get the information of where Gideon is, he just unmasks in such a weird way. Even Rhett, who like defends Star Wars tooth and nail no matter what,
even the Last Jedi,
he was sitting there going, "Why would you have a console with top secret information about locations of generals and moffs in the middle of the wet room, the cafeteria?" Yeah. and the only thing it requires is a facial scan, which doesn't have to match anything apparently, because the Mandalorian's face is not in their database as someone who has clearance. So apparently it just you put in a chip and then it scans your face and is like, okay, well, you're not a bad person, we guess. So you can have access to our top secret information, which, by the way, I deal with technology, and video technology, and there are things called whitelist and blacklist, right? You can have a whitelist where you only approve certain things, or a blacklist where you only deny certain things, right? Mm-hmm. So apparently, to get top secret Imperial information, it's a blacklist where they only deny certain people, which is the worst way you could do it.
They had a conversation where they all were like, they'll recognize me, I got arrested for this or whatever, I'm a clone. Like every one of them, they had that conversation about who was the only one that had an anonymous face. So yeah, maybe it was just like they're looking for any bad marks, and then the rest would be fine. But if I remember,
and then he has the chip he plugs in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Surely you should have both to get top secret information as well.
Yeah. So it's funny you mentioned that, because I this last little while I was reading through again the West End games. If anyone wants to learn about awesome Star Wars stuff, read the West End games role playing stuff. They had it back in the 90s, the rights to it, and they wrote the stuff that turned into the expanded universe. Timothy's on all them. They used the role-playing manuals as their references for what this world looks like. This was their encyclopedia to the Star Wars universe besides the movies. It was such good stuff. And the Death Star, the technical guide talks about how the security is set up where you have to go from like different departments of security, like communications or prisoners or security or whatever, to whatever the high up military information, whatever, to the kitchen, whatever. And if you had a code, depending on who had the code, and that's what those things are. When you watch the movies and you have the Imperials walk around, they have those 3 things sticking up. Those are cylinders that have their authorization. So if you grab Grand Moff Tarkin, take his cylinder, you can plug it in. That's his credentials, and he can access whatever. They didn't have face recognition scans.
Apparently. Yeah,
because they didn't think about that back in the 70s and 80s.
No, which is fine. They didn't think about who knows what's going to be developed today, right?
But you would take those cylinders, plug it in, and that's what would give you access. And so in the role-playing game, you have difficulties on trying to, break security for different levels, and you'd have to do different steps to get through from this department to that department. If you walk into the kitchen and plug in a cylinder, you have a few checks to get to like the security sector or the tractor beams or whatever. So like when they were talking about that, I was like, this really fits and feels like what they were doing, other than the facial scan. So it made sense because they grabbed the captain's thing, if I remember, and that's the one they plugged in, and that's right. Didn't they grab his? How did they get? Or was it the driver's?
I thought it was the whole reason they did it is because Mayfeld, they wanted to use his credentials. They thought they were still valued. I think it was just his credentials. Maybe I had to go back and watch.
Whatever. It all works.
But it's irrelevant to the overall plot. But then my point is, then the Mandalorian takes off his mask, and I'm like,
for no reason.
For why are you doing this at this moment? And actually at the moment I was actually kind of like, okay, I guess he feels like he has to, and Mayfeld sort of brought up a point. But then in the next episode he takes off his mask, and I'm like, well, he just did it.
Yeah.
If you had done it, if you had waited all the way from the end of last season to now, I think it would have been more meaningful. But he just took it off last episode already. So
I haven't thought about that. That wasn't my thought. I saw it on Kevin Smith's podcast, so we're going to talk about that in a minute. And the rest of this episode, though, I like this, hijacking the trucks and driving them in. When the scavengers started coming up, I thought it was a little too
They're not scavengers. They call them pirates, which made me laugh. I'm like, these aren't pirates. They're just blowing things up.
They're terrorists. Yeah, they're blowing up. They're just attacking Imperials because they're Imperials, and they were hurting their people. Like,
they're straight up terrorists. They're not pirates, but whatever.
It's like, because they weren't pirates would be looting something. They weren't looting anything.
No, they weren't stealing anything.
So they all go in. They all have thermo detonators, which again, thermo detonators are really expensive and rare. That's why when Bausch pulls one out, it's like a big deal because they're hard to come by. These guys all have like thermal detonators.
Just all over the place, yeah.
Whatever. That scene was fine. I enjoyed everything that happened, and I love the dialogue on the inside. I can't remember specifics with Bill Burr and Mandalorian. I thought where he was trying to get some reaction out of him, he was just being cool, all that.
Well, and that's where he was talking to him about like, rules are rules until they're on the line. And what does that mean to you? And you find out Bill Burr's character was an Imperial who got disaffected with the Empire because of the things they did.
Yeah, which is good setup for what happens. So when they finally arrive, right before they get to the bridge, that's when suddenly, with this terribly unstable, explosive material on this truck, 2 TIE fighters fly in and just start blasting the ground, trying to pick off guys. And then the people come across the bridge and they charge in, and then they start, those troopers come in and shoot off like the last couple of skiffs, and then they just, cruise in there. I'm like, where were they like half an hour ago? Like, this is way too late for their involvement. And it seems incredibly risky to have 2 TIE fighters coming and blasting individual people off of near a
when
truck.
There's a bunch of explosive material right there.
That's so precious to them. Whatever. Until that part I was loving it. And then they got there, I'm like, okay. They fly in there.
It was cool. I mean, there were moments that were cool, like the Mandalorian spearing the dude, and that kind of sets up, oh, he knows how to use spears because that's going to matter. Like, but it was cool when he did it and things like that. I mean, there were cool parts of the episode, and I liked the conversation.
Yeah,
and the action scenes were fun.
Well, the one thing I liked about it is the personality they gave the Empire for the first time. When they finally arrive in there, you have all the Imperials come out and they're cheering like, "Yeah, long live the the Empire, not the rebellion, or whatever." You know, they were like cheering in excitement for this little victory of theirs. And a lot of people have talked about how it's because this is like the remnants of the remainder of what's left of the Imperials that have used to be like full on, you know, we're the Empire, we are law and order, and that's it. Now they are the Rebel Alliance, where every little victory is a big deal to them, and they survived, and then they cheer. What I liked about it is how hearing them cheering and having some fanfare tells us that these people are devoted to the Imperial creed, to what they're trying to accomplish. Previous Empire, they were drafted from the academy. They were just people that wanted a career and like they wanted a job, you know, in like the biggest military organization where they could get a job as a pilot or whatever. And they weren't necessarily devoted. These guys were devoted to the Empire. And so when they were celebrating, I liked that little energy there. And it kind of felt like, whatever. I was going to give a video game reference, but who cares? I really like seeing that. And then when they get into the galley scene where they're talking to the guy, and the guy's bragging, the captain or whatever is bragging to them about, what was he talking about? About that battle where they had to make decisions and they had a lot of casualties, and then Bill Burr finally shoots him. I love that character because he felt so much like a role-playing non-player character, like an NPC from a video game or something. So kind of cartoony, a little over the top, but had some really fun dialogue. It was perfect. You don't hear Imperials talk quite like that guy in the movies. I
think it shows that in the Empire, and I think this is more reality too, the people at the bottom aren't necessarily on the same page as the people at the top.
Right.
You know, the stormtroopers are just trying to fight for what's best for the Empire and for peace and unity, right? Like that's what they feel that they're doing.
Or what they're talking about is better.
Right. But the people, when you get up to a certain point, they're the ones that make the bad decisions or good decision.
Right. Absolutely. And that's why I love the humanity, not humanity like compassion, but I mean the human nature that you have these Imperial people, and where it was all gray. And you saw Bill Burr where he sided in that gray area, and then he kills the guy for kind of gloating about those decisions. And then you see the retribution. And the best part of that is right after he shoots him, they turn and there's that guy holding his tray with his drink. And he's like,
right.
And he shoots him. And then he takes out like 5 guys in there, and you're like, and you don't feel bad for him because we just saw them celebrate this victory. These guys are devotees. They care about the movement of the Empire. But I'm like, okay, this is a little too much. Kind of like when you watch movies like Taken, where Liam Neeson gets in the room, he just kills everyone just so instantly and just flawlessly. And this one, I'd be kind of frustrated by that, but except we've established that Bill Burr is an ex-sharpshooter. He knows how to wield a pistol and take out people very quickly. Even though my complaint in the first season was that stupid little thing on his backpack. I hated that. And sharpshooters usually are like snipers. They're like riflemen, not pistoliers. Whatever. They did it. It pulled off.
He does it at the end of the episode, though. He takes a shot. Yes. And the assassin girl's all like, wow, nice shot. And I'm like, these two should just go snipe the universe together. But
yeah. Yeah. And that was really cool when they get out there. The plan all came together. I was sitting there waiting, like, what are they doing watching the gunner on the roof and stuff? Like, what is their position here? And then they start climbing out the window and escape, and he's like shooting people through the vents. They're like picking people off on the roof. I was like, this is awesome. This is like a really cool like role-playing episode. That's what it really felt like, a campaign. It was a filler just to go get the coordinates. That's unnecessary.
But it was a fun episode, right? It was a filler. It was filler, but it was fun. And I do like too how, you know, they set up all the trucks being very explosive, and then he shoots the truck.
The one they celebrated.
Yeah.
And takes out the whole base. It was really cool. I liked all that. Then, you know, Slave One flies down, picks him up, and then he takes the shot and everything. It was really good. At the end of that, or at the beginning of that, I thought it was really weird how the conversation they had about the base. It seemed like the cockpit or the little lobby area of the Slave One was like ginormous for what it looks like. Whatever. I had some complaints about the interior of Slave One in the show, but whatever. They get there, moving quickly into the next episode. Next thing we see is Slave One hunting down in a dogfight the shuttle from that had the cloning guy from season 1 on it, and it's just Slave One is hot on his tail, blasting all over it, and then they're like barely getting away, and then you have some fun dialogue with the pilots, and I really liked all of that. And then they ion the ship, and then when it comes up in front of the cockpit, it just like rises up in front of them. You're like, oh, they're boned, and they don't recognize it because this is too far out from them to be like, dude, that's Slave One, and you can see Fett right there piloting it.
Right.
His reputation is kind of diminished a little bit 5 years later. But then they board it, and then they have that other scene. And I love this conversation about Alderaan. And we did miss a part we'll talk about, but that conversation about Alderaan where the Death Star, and the guy was like, I was there when we blew up your planet. He's like trying to
and he was like, it's totally worth it, because how many lives did we save by doing that? Which is sort of an analogy to nuking Japan, right? Like, the idea is how many lives did you save, right? And I mean, from their perspective, if you're trying to end the war, because I think at that point, after they did that, everyone sort of fell in line except for the rebels. I think in the storyline, and then they blew up 2 more Death Stars and killed tons and tons of people.
And what I praised from Rogue One was if the Death Star hadn't blown up, when you saw those shots, when the Death Star traveled to a couple planets and they showed what it looked like from the planet in orbit, it was menacing. If there was a reputation of this space station that destroyed a planet, and then all of a sudden you see that in your orbit, guess what? You are in line with whatever they're going to say, because you can't do anything about it. And that presence of that orb is just horrifying. And just the reputation alone, and just when you saw it come in, sometimes it's upside down or whatever, but once that dish is pointed at your planet, that's all it needed. And that was the Emperor's whole plan. It was like, I have the Force, I have Darth Vader, and I can do whatever I want that way. But just the whole conversation with Tarkin and his council, just the existence of this functional weapon after a demonstration is all we need. Its existence is enough to keep the planets in line. That's what that was the whole plan. And that's why he said blowing up Dantooine is not going to demonstrate anything, but Alderaan was a big deal. And that's where you see where that guy, he understood that. He's like, if they blew up Alderaan, look what we accomplished, where everyone would have fallen in order and we would have saved a lot of lives and ended the war. And then they had the conversation where we blew up the Death Star. He was like, I was on the Death Star. She's like, which one? That was so awesome. It's a really good conversation there in the shootout. I loved it. And then, but there was also the conversation we missed where they go into the bar to pick up Bo-Katan and her buddies, where they were talking to Fett. And as soon as she hears Boba Fett's voice, she's like, you're no Mandalorian. And I was like, and it took me a second because I'm an idiot, but I'm like, how does she know from that? And I was like, oh, she recognizes that voice from every stormtrooper she's interacted with over those few years. I'm like, oh, and then I thought that was brilliant. Then they have their really little fight in there. Did you like that scene? What'd you think about that?
I like the scene. I did feel like she was able to throw him around pretty easy for him, but then they kind of knew they were in a neutral position, so I guess it was okay. But I don't know.
So I just worried that 2 flamethrowers blended and just kind of canceled each other out. I'm like, what?
I might be hypersensitive after The Last Jedi and even the last prequel trilogy about, inserting political ideology or whatever. I was all like, if this girl's kicked Boba Fett's butt, I'm just going to be like, whatever. Stop doing that. But it ended up neutral, so it's fine.
He's a little rusty too. I mean, he's we see he's out of shape. 5 years he put on a lot of weight, back eating a lot of banthas, walking around Tatooine, I guess.
Just bantha fat. That's his whole diet for 5 years.
But he is rusty, and it was cool to show that they can hold their own against Boba Fett, let alone as a Mandalorian. That kind of works. I don't like seeing Boba Fett get thrown around too much because it's all about his reputation, and we know he's an effective fighter.
Well, that's what I'm worried that there's some of that ideology coming in, woman power ideology, and I don't mind that. Like the scene later when the women raid the whole ship, I'm just like, this is awesome. This is a little D&D group, and they're all super cool. That's fine. Like it's cool. I'm all for that. But when you try and make a point of it, so I was just worried about it. I don't think they did it there. I think it ended up neutral, and that's fine. They sort of went back and forth. And
So as they go and take out the ship. We'll get into that. So to get into the ship, I love this scene. I love how they had to fly through hyperspace, and this first time in the series, I think we saw them in hyperspace. And the first time we've ever seen two ships flying in the hyperspace lane together, because you saw the Lambda shuttle and Slave One behind it, just kind of buffing around in the tube. Right. I thought that was super cool, because all my life, when you watch Return of the Jedi, when the Alliance flies to take off from the Solace to go to the Death Star, they go boom, 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 boom. You watch them do that in all the movies, and then they all come out boom, 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 boom. I'm always like, how do they not crash into each other? Like, how do they have the coordinates that specific? And now we got to see they're in eyesight of each other.
Right, when you're going through the light speed, yeah.
I was like, well, that makes sense. Like, what if someone stalls? This is cluttering it up. Anyway,
just blast them. Yeah.
Anyway, so he comes out, and I thought people have criticized this, that the Empire always falls for the same thing. This was a brilliant scheme to make them force a landing, that they are under fire again by Boba Fett, who is so accurate he can make it look like he's shooting a target like Luke without actually hitting the target. He was so effective at shooting around. It reminded me of Spaceballs when he was like, fire. What does it say? Fire across her nose, or fire across her nose. And he says,
right.
Not up it. But they fly in, and he is just on them. And then they're like requesting a landing. We're coming in right now, and then they show the hangar bay, the TIE fighters being dispatched. Again, reading the Death Star technical manual, it talks about how the TIE fighters are launched with a tractor beam. There's a tractor beam in the racks that pull them and just kind of project them out and shoot them. That's kind of how I thought. I know they showed it like it was the guy like piloting like a speed racing right through the tunnel or the funnel of the wings there, but it all kind of felt very much like the role-playing games have always, and all the books have established it because of those games. I like that. I love seeing the racks. I love seeing the TIE fighter take off. And then as soon as the Lambda shuttle came in and crash landed, I was like, that is genius, because now they can't get out. They can't do anything else with that hangar. All the ships are blocked. So I didn't understand what their plan was at the point, but because I didn't follow along when they were doing their breakdown of the plan. Boba Fett instantly he's
just like, I'm out. Yeah. Which I thought was funny, especially since the where they left off the last episode is, I need to come help you. So my oath isn't done until the child is safe. And you're like, okay, but then he's all like, okay, see ya.
Yeah.
Like, I'm assuming you guys are gonna succeed, so off I go. And
he's like, I've done enough. Or it's like, I've invested enough in myself. I got you in there. I'm out. I love that.
Yeah.
And he takes off, and so then so they go in. All the women and Mandalorian goes off on his own. The women all storm the bridge, and I didn't pick up on this until I heard a lot of other people.
Well, and they're like all special forces too, which is why I think it's believable and awesome, right? You got Cara Dune, who's a drop trooper, and you got the assassin, and you got Mandalorians who have been trained since birth to be combat
warriors.
The four of them are just their armies unto themselves, and yet, not comparable to a Jedi Master.
Yes, absolutely. And we've just seen a female Jedi in action, so it's not like they're like, well, dismissive. We've seen women power represented. But what I love about this, and people have made the comparison to Endgame, the scene where they all came into frame, all the women superheroes that had some of them no affiliation with each other and no reason for them to show
up. And they're like, we got this woman power, and you're like, what? Do you even know each other? Do you even know what's going on? And then it's ultimately irrelevant.
Yes, exactly. And I was like, this works. And I didn't think about it when they got into the bridge. I didn't think about them all being women, mostly because they're all masked, and I was just like captivated by the story. But like you said, they are all characters. They're established characters that work the scene, and the reason to put them together, that women, took out the entire bridge and completely overtook this whole ship with one Mandalorian that disappeared. It was all representation and all diversity. You have no one in there except for Luke that comes in later. Spoiler again, is Caucasian. No one. A white male. No one. They all did it. Everyone in there is diverse, but it was done so organically, so beautifully, and so naturally with the story that it felt right. Like, you didn't even think about it, but they sent the message. Not like Endgame. But anyway, moving on to that.
No, I agree. Like, it was set up. This is what I'm talking about. There's inserting your
propaganda,
or your affiliate or your political agenda or whatever, and then there's building a story which can have your agenda with it, but actually build towards it in a way that makes sense.
Not
Don't
like
just shove it in.
Or the Last Jedi, where a third of it was about animal rights out of nowhere with no
out of
context,
nowhere. Oh, but we saved the animals, not the kid slaves. We aren't going to save them, but we saved the animals.
We took the harness off. Now it's worth it.
all you did was annoy the rich people for a couple days. Like, they're just going to rebuild that.
Yeah,
they don't
and
care.
They can go find those animals in the forest too.
Right? They'll go grab them again. Like, what? Literally accomplished nothing. Yeah. Taking one of the slaves with them would have accomplished more.
Yeah, but they gave a ring to the boy. Anyway, yeah.
Here's a ring, kid. You'll be fine being tortured. One of us.
And I'm sure when they see that symbol, someone down the road, no, they won't kill you immediately for that. No. Anyway, so yeah, it was done right. It was beautiful. I think just like the original Star Wars, there was propaganda, there were messages in there. But just like the way the fan service in this series is done right, that was propaganda. And not that you have to throw propaganda, but there's no reason you can't expand and have diversity.
And Star Wars is political themes, right? I mean, you got kings and empires, and there's political themes, so that's fine. But usually, you have a theme and you're exploring it and you're going somewhere with the story, yeah. Right. Whereas Endgame was just, we're shoving this in.
Right.
They were building a story. This was just, all these characters were awesome. They were established as awesome. They all have a vested interest in what's going on, and they all came together and did their job.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the Mandalorian is going to do his job, and he sets up something for later. And his job is to deal with the Death Troopers. But one gets out before he can deal with them. And I love the Death Troopers setup, especially because he succeeds ultimately in his mission, which is he closes the blast doors, opens the ones that go out to space. All the Death Troopers get sucked out, and you're just like, I was sitting there thinking, well, that was dumb.
Yeah.
Why do you have I guess maybe that's how they go out. That's how they deploy. Why would you just have the Death Troopers so easily disposable?
Have a big airlock right in their chamber.
Right. And I'm thinking, well, that's dumb. And then he fights one of them and struggles heavily to defeat one of them. Just one. Which Moff Gideon brings up later when they all converge on the bridge and is like, you had problems with one, and then the Death Troopers all come back because they're droids and they have rockets, so it didn't matter that they got shoved into space. They are able to come back. They did a few laps
around because they conveniently vanished for a good 10 minutes of action, and then all of a sudden they come back. And so it's like,
and then maybe there's an explanation. I don't know. I mean, if you get shoved out into space, maybe you get launched a little ways. I don't know, but they did recover, and it was definitely for plot reasons. They arrived at the appropriate time, right when Moff Gideon looks like he's gonna lose.
Yeah,
they show up. That's definitely at the speed of plot.
I like for sure. I like the Terminator fight. They were like Terminators, and they were represented the way Dark Troopers were in the game. And in the original Dark Forces, they would always appear, even the different phases. Sometime in the very first version of it, in the phase 1 Dark Trooper, it looks like a Terminator. It's just a skeleton body, and it doesn't have guns or anything. It walks up. Did you play through it, Zach? Years ago. It comes up, and it just comes up, and it just comes up and hits you. That's all they are. They're just a skeleton, a metal skeleton, like a Terminator. They weren't like this in this one. They were perfected and finalized, but like, when they came upon you in the game, it was kind of scary because you couldn't just quickly outrun them. Like, you had to get away and take cover and back up and shoot away. And they
had them in the Force Unleashed too, which is kind of sort of a outlier game altogether. Yeah. But still, even in that game, you were like, oh crap.
Yeah. So that was really cool. When he fought the one, I thought the same thing. I was like, well, what a waste that you introduced these. My son was watching with my two boys were watching with me. My 13-year-old. He appreciated the music when they were being charged up and everything, not at the door, but before he sucked them out, he was like, this music is really, really good because of me, they're appreciating cinematography and music a little bit.
Yeah, that's good.
He calls that out, and he's like, because it really did set the tone. And then when that one grips because it was quick, he grips that thing and pulls the door open, like, oh no! And then he fights him, and nothing works. A flamethrower just ignites him. He looks awesome, his blaster under him. He shoots a rope, he rips it up or whatever. I can't remember all the things that happened.
Yeah. It was finally just the Beskar spear that he was able to push up through, and
which came out of nowhere. Did that thing retract? I couldn't figure that out. He didn't have it on his back during the fight.
Suddenly pulled it out. I would have to go rewatch that because I remember feeling kind of the same way. I'm like, oh, there's the spear now, but I don't think it was collapsible.
He pulled it out of his inventory box like a role-playing game. Anyway, so he pulled it out, stabbed it. It was cool. But the one went down. Then he was cut through the fight with Gideon and the baby. Excuse me, Grogu. That encounter with Grogu, I liked seeing how beat he was, and the Darksaber right there. That conversation was really good. But did you think when he said, I don't care about the Darksaber, you can have it, I just want the child, that's it.
I did actually believe him, just because that same actor plays a kind of morally gray evil character from Breaking Bad, and I was almost like, who knows? Maybe he's just like, fine, take it. I thought for a second.
Other people have said that. I didn't watch Breaking Bad, so I'm out of the loop.
Yeah. Sorry.
I was like, he's really going to let him do it. And I believe him that he extracted the blood, and this is just a hostage situation now. And I thought he was intimidated enough. They took out the whole ship. He was intimidated enough that he was going to let them go, as a cowardly Imperial would.
Yeah.
No. And then he attacks from the behind, and then they get into their fight. The only thing that really stood out that I loved about the fight was that moment where the Darksaber was stabbed into the wall and they were grinding up, and he was cutting through it. And it reminded me, do you remember the original previews for the Force Unleashed game? That's what the trailer, all it was him walking, just a black cowl, and he's just stabbing his lightsaber, just walking down the hallway. You're like,
they also had a little bit of that, I swear, in what's his name, the Rogue Jedi, Kyle Katarn.
Yes, yeah, there was, because that had to do with the light and dark choices you could take, and that was a little bit of the attitude. Yeah, it's really cool. I love seeing that, and the clashing and everything. Really awesome. Nothing. He did a few of his gadgets against Gideon too, and nothing worked. Because he's that's where he cut the rope. That's what it was.
Right.
Anyway, so any thoughts about that fight? Anything? I just enjoyed it. Just loved it.
It was fun. I think I understood what they were setting up, because immediately when he beat him and took the Darksaber, I was like, oh crap, Bo-Katan's not going to be happy. But
so you saw that coming right there, huh?
Oh yeah, but that's because I've seen Rebels and the Clone Wars and all that, so I knew that was going to be an issue. I didn't know how big of an issue, but I knew it was going to be an issue.
Yeah. So let's talk about it. So they get him back to the bridge and throw him down on the ground, and they've taken over the whole ship. And then he has that beautiful dialogue where he's completely messing with their heads, but pulling out the point that it's not done. And all it did was get much more complicated now that they won. And now they have the thing he's trying to get rid of.
There's more internal conflict now that the Mandalorian beat him and took the thing. So the D&D group now has an internal struggle, because the one character's ultimate goal is now in the other character's hand, and the only way they can get it is through combat.
Yeah.
Because if she just takes it, no Mandalorian will consider her the actual leader of the Mandalorian. She actually has to take it via combat.
I wonder, as you're talking, I'm wondering if that was her, and if he just walked in and handed it, if she would have taken it and it's mine, she would have claimed it without Gideon throwing that into her mind, and because she's like, no, he's right. I wonder if he corrupted their exchange, with accuracy. But he was like, he called him out. He's like, no, it's not that simple. And then he explained why they have a problem. And I'm trying to think, this reminded me of dialogue in a similar movie where it's like, you won, but now I'm conflicting it and I'm confusing you.
Right.
Oh, I can't.
No, but I like it too because the Mandalorian's just like, I don't care. Here, have it. And she's like, no, I can't take it. And he's like, I yield.
Yeah.
Fine. Whatever.
It's Solo. At the end of Solo, when they're trying to tempt each other and he turns around and he shoots the guys, he's like, I like making a decision when I'm the only one with a gun. That conversation with Nelson's
yeah,
character,
that's right.
That triple cross, it felt very similar. It was like, because it was all part of the conversation. So anyway, everything's settled. And they're going to, well, not everything's settled, but all of a sudden the Dark Troopers start flying in and there's a signal and Grogu's like looking at the computer, watching all these dots fly back in. And he's like, oh, now you're screwed. Covers up the blaster, whatever. That was consequential. And then they're sitting there. And then we have the Mines of Moria scene from Lord of the Rings where they come up and they strut in there and you see them on the footage just coming through every stage of the ship that we just watched them take out. And then they come up, lined up out the door, and then they start punching.
They start pounding it, yeah.
And it reminded me of that scene, or that dialogue. The very first time I saw that in the Mines of Moria scene where he's reading from the book and the drums, dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
And anticipation before they were revealed. It's too bad we already saw the Dark Troopers, or it would have been just as good. But yeah, I was.
They had to establish them though for what happened next. They had to establish the Dark Troopers. They needed to show how awesome they were, and just be all like, "Okay, these guys are dead." And I was even thinking, someone's got to come save them. I don't know who. Someone is going to show up and save them, and I'm thinking Mace Windu, maybe Ahsoka is going to show up again. Someone's going to come save them.
I didn't. I thought they were just going to fight their way out and just be like, well, and I thought there'd be more casualties. That's all I thought was going to happen. Well, then, funniest thing happens, Zach.
One of the greatest moments in Star Wars.
Let's just break down, just kind of go through it very quickly. And I just want to know, we've kind of talked about it, but kind of how you felt as it was happening. Because I was just sitting there with my kids, just like curious about what was going to happen, but I was no longer totally engaged because the main bad battles have happened. It's all done. They got the Darksaber and it's all over. And then all of a sudden they turn and they see an X-Wing fly in. And my first thought was those Rangers that were, highway patrolling around Tatooine and stuff, like guys like that. I was like, oh, these guys are going to come up and have some dialogue, maybe get blown up or whatever, have a distraction, and be just like, call in the Rebel Alliance and be a fight, and then they escape. That's what I thought was going to happen. I mean, she's like, oh, one X-Wing.
Well, that's right. We're saved, and I thought it's got to be a Jedi. Like I'm thinking. I actually thought it was Mace Windu because that was my prediction. I'm like, maybe Mace Windu, they're going to pull him in and say, I don't know what they're going to do.
The last thing I thought was a Jedi from an X-Wing because they've popped in throughout the whole show. My mind was like, it's another X-Wing because they always show them in 1 or 2 or 3 in this series.
Yeah. Well, once he came in though, and then I saw the things, like I'm all like, oh my gosh, is that? No, it can't be. Like I'm in denial about it. Because I'm like, how are they going to do this? Are they going to actually bring in an actor to double for him? And then I see the glove, and even my wife is watching with me, and she's like, what is it,
Don't get ahead. So the
Sorry.
ship flies in, you're fine. And then it cuts to the camera, and Grogu's sitting there on the floor, not looking at the camera. He's just sitting on the floor, and all of a sudden his ears perk up. He goes like that. I jumped to I was like, oh, wait a minute. And I'm like, I inhale. Okay, I physically inhale, and I'm leaning back on the couch. I inhale, my kids are sitting there, and then it shows on the camera footage the X-Wing fly into the hangar and stop, and then I jump to my edge of my seat, literally, because I thought instantly that's how they can bring back Luke. I said no way, because they can do it on the camera footage, because you can do it. It's all crackly and black and white.
Right, they can have any actor stand in and do all the choreography and all
dialogue,
that.
just show him come out, do something. I didn't think it would be action. I thought he would just make an appearance, they do something on the bridge, and then just go their own ways and just kind of watch it. No.
He cleans house. Like he takes on the every Dark Trooper. In fact, I swear he took the longest way through the ship. just to take out every Dark Trooper.
He goes through every room that we just saw them clear out. They start in the cargo bay, and that's what was brilliant about how they directed it, how they started with the camera view. Then it showed the camera view with him doing a few Jedi things. You didn't see a glove yet, just the lightsaber and the back of the cloak. And then he took out a few guys in the hangar bay. Then it cuts back to the bridge with their reactions. Then it cuts back to live footage of him, and it shows him walking out in the foreground of the camera with the beam out. And you're like, it's him. And there's no denying it at that point. It's Luke Skywalker, green blade.
Well, I was in denial the whole time. Like, you see him, you see him with the glove. I saw the glove. I see the lightsaber, and I'm like, that looks like his lightsaber, and it's green. And then you see the belt buckle, and I'm just like.
He shoots his hand, so you know his one glove hand. He shoots the guy off with that hand.
That's not gloved. And I'm just like, no. How are they going to do this? What are they actually going to show him? Like, I was in denial. Like, I couldn't believe it. I was like super excited.
It. You're seeing the man. This is my original 80s Jedi Knight Luke. It's my favorite toy. I used to get toothpicks and color them green to have him fight with an awesome lightsaber. Then when the Return of the Jedi Special Edition came out, the first toy I got, because this figure didn't come out until the Special Edition of Jedi came out, had to get my Jedi Knight Luke, and that is my freaking hero. And this is my favorite from the Force Unleashed collection. This is the only one I really cared about, was the Jedi Knight.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Luke. I was like, this is my hero. And even in the expanded universe, the Dark Forces cartoon, where he was like full badass Jedi Knight, I was like, that's my hero. And I always wanted to see my hero, Luke Skywalker, after Jedi in action. That's why I was so frustrated with the prequels or the sequel movies, because they just cut that all out. And
this is what I was saying earlier. They were like, the fans through all those movies wanted Luke Skywalker. That's what they wanted. And then they're all like, we'll tease him in Force Awakens. I'm like, fine, but he better be awesome in the next two movies. And he has an awesome moment. One. And he's not even the main character in those movies, in any of them. He's one of the characters in The Last Jedi, but he's not the main character by any means. And this is what fans want, and none of us got it. And so they do this, and they do it so beautifully. They set it up so that he's so awesome, and then they have his version. And this was confirmed by Favreau. They did base that final hallway scene where Luke is beating the line of troops.
Off Rogue One.
Yes, it was his Darth Vader hallway moment. Like they did that, and the way he described it is as George Lucas described it, which is it rhymes. Like they're in sync, which is beautiful, which is awesome.
It wasn't a ripoff. It was like, we saw it, and we want to see the other side of it.
Now yes, exactly. Here's Luke Skywalker's version of that, which we all deserved in those movies, but Kathleen Kennedy,
she didn't take the reins.
She passed herself.
Let the lone writers do whatever they wanted. And this is not, I don't blame, he was dug in. We all know who to blame. Let's just move on. We know exactly who to blame.
Anyways, no, and so, but you finally got it. And that's why, like, people like Kevin Smith were crying. You were emotional. I was screaming. Like, in my like, it's just, you're just like, oh my gosh, this is so awesome. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yes. I didn't start crying yet. I did by the end of the episode, but it was all yelling and excitement. I was cheering, waiting for my neighbors to start hitting the roof with the broom, because I was like loud. I didn't jump up and down, but my kids were like, what? And they were like, they kept looking at me like, I'm like, they're like, what? I'm like, it's Luke. Just from seeing the original, it's Luke. And I'm like so excited. And they're like, how do you know it's Luke? I'm like, it's Luke. And they're like, are you what? And they're just like watching. They don't understand why I'm so excited, because this new generation of kids don't comprehend the majesty of this guy. They're like, Anakin and all these Force superpowers, all this goofy stuff in the cartoons. They don't understand it. Why I was so proud when I made my kids sit and watch the original trilogy. My daughter, my oldest, she was like maybe 9 at the time. When we watched it, she'd already seen the prequels, watched the Clone Wars cartoon stuff, because my brother indoctrinates them on that crap. But then when we watch Return of the Jedi, when Luke Skywalker springs into action on the sail barge fight, She's like, wow, he's really awesome. I'm like, thank you. Yes, this is a hero. This is a Jedi Knight, not all this goofy stuff that they added later. It's this guy. And this character brought so much love and imagination and excitement to this little boy when I was their age, that like this was bringing that back full circle, where I could see it on the big screen of special effects with a dubbed actor and everything. I don't care. It was so satisfying. And if the music, the music felt, it was so quiet. They could have had this if this was the prequels and Rian Johnson or the sequels. Not Rian Johnson, but the music would have been a lot that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
Right.
Which works great for those movies. But this is our majestic and composed, peaceful, balanced Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, his prime, right? This is him at his prime, just walking through, and he didn't look like he was struggling at all.
No.
Like, the Mandalorian was struggling so hard against one of them, and these people fight against each other and have problems, and then he just walks through
calmly.
And then he just walks in the room and just, hi, I'm here, and you're all like, you just fought in a giant battle, and you're just like, yeah, everything's fine.
He's like, are you guys gonna try anything? Do we need to do this? Right? But he walks in, he fights everyone, in that last moment where they stop, the ones on the last door before the blast door, they turn around towards the elevator, and you show him on the camera footage walk in. I think it was the camera, whatever. He gets on the elevator and closes. That reminded me of the Return of the Jedi elevator. I'm like, this is our hero now, like a completely different situation where he's not a prisoner going in to go up the elevator. He's now rising up to it in his full capacity. Goes up and the door opens, and then there's your Darth Vader moment, like you were saying.
The other thing, oh gosh, well, that reminds me too, speaking of that, just correlating things. This isn't canon anymore, but the new Jedi Academy trilogy, where he would go around the galaxy, and they were looking for Force sensitive people, and it didn't matter it didn't matter how old you were, it didn't matter where you came from or your background. He wanted to help you, and he's going around and collecting people, and it was nice to see that is still alive in this universe too. I really like that trilogy. Yeah, and it was one of those, anyone could be a Jedi, It's not, you don't have to be high midichlorian count and brought in at an early age. It's, well, there's different levels of power, and of course Grogu seems to be extremely powerful, but still, like, that feeling of just, well, anyone can be a Jedi. If you have the Force, you just need the training, and he and that's what he's searching for.
Something I just thought of as you said that, Ahsoka's concern was she had seen fear in Anakin Skywalker, and it scared her from taking on Grogu. Luke saw the redemption of what happened with that fear, and he knows that anyone can be saved. He says there's hope. So there was no hesitation for him to take Grogu on. And this isn't a comparison of who's better. It's just there's a different.
No, it's just a concept of understanding, right? What experiences.
An experience. Yeah, she experienced the darkness, and Luke didn't see the things that she saw. She saw evil in her father and a lot of horrible things that he did, but it was all in his career, not the actual fall of Anakin Skywalker, having known the good man before. He never saw that. All he saw was a bad man turn good. You can turn good.
That's super interesting, actually. That's an interesting dichotomy between those two characters. One saw her as good. She saw him as good and then bad, and then he saw him as bad and then good. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I like that. I love the reveal, and we talk about the effects, the CGI, whatever. I don't have any.
I don't care. It's not perfect. His lips, if you watch his lips carefully, you can tell it's not perfect, but who flipping
where his bottom mouth doesn't move. There's no O's.
Yeah, it's fine. Whatever. It's a TV show, and they de-aged him, and it's just life, right? It's reality.
But I'm the guy that defended Tarkin. I love Tarkin in Rogue One. I
think people were overly critical of that. If anyone who had no idea who he was didn't notice anything, they're just like, it's just another character. Oh, did you know that was a CG? I actually did this with people who didn't know who he was. I said, did you know that was a CG character? And they're like, no. And I'm like, look. And I play the clip, and they're all like, that's a CG person? And I'm like, yes, that actor is dead. And they're like, what? But if so whatever.
Yeah.
It's fine, especially for a TV series.
Yeah, it was a lot cheaper budget to do it than they did in Rogue One and all that stuff, and I didn't need him to do any more than that. I would never have said I'd rather than take away Luke being there because the CGI looked bad. I will never ever say that. I got to see all of that at the cost of having a computer game effect. Right. It's fine, whatever. I wish they hadn't lingered on it so much. They could have done a few more shots from behind or whatever, reaction
I guess. People. Then it may have felt more like Leia in Episode 9, though, where you're all like, okay, you're obviously shoving her into these scenes somehow. Yeah. Like, that's how bad it was that they were trying to push having her be the new main character in the series, as they actually were forcing her scenes and weird angles.
In the Kevin Smith podcast, going back to where you were talking about the helmet, Kevin Smith's podcast, I can't remember who was talking about it. Doesn't matter. Our audience probably didn't watch it. Doesn't care. But the comment was that we've seen Mandalorian take off his helmet multiple times, but this was the first time, this isn't new, but this is the first time that Grogu saw the helmet. And the comment was that Luke, sitting there watching this, may have had this thought that that he had his father told him, take my mask off so I can look at you with my own eyes. Here he's watching a father figure take off his mask for his son to be able to see him himself. And also, who knows what's going to happen with this Mandalorian lore, with the culture with this guy. When he sees him again in the future, he'd want to be able to recognize his face. That's another possibility too.
That's interesting.
But there could have been a thought there that Luke was seeing some reminiscence here of what happened with his father. And then when he takes him on, that look is when Luke picks him up and he looks at him, he's just like, he's almost like, I can't believe I'm seeing another whatever Yoda.
Oh yeah, another. But Baby Yoda. He was thinking what we were all like. It's Baby Yoda. Yeah. That's exactly what he was thinking.
Yeah. So the other thought, if Boba Fett had been in the group, I think it would have been so awesome to have him cowering in the corner.
When Luke comes in, just like,
But when he takes off his mask to have Boba Fett, just as shocked to see Luke as we were shocked to see Boba Fett.
That's actually probably why they didn't have him there, now that I think about it. I know they sent him off to send thing, but they probably didn't want to create a confrontation. Yeah. They wanted to focus on
and it would have been a cool look for Luke to look over at him. And I just watched Elf,
give him the Jesus look. Do you remember Finding Faith in Christ when the guy's like, I have faith, Lord, and Jesus is just like,
Yeah. No, I was thinking in Elf when the dwarf author jumps up on the table where he's like grabbing his stuff to leave, and the dad's like, he's crazy. He thinks he's an elf, and he looks at him and is like, it's like that kind of a look at Boba Fett, like kind of are we gonna do this? Anyway, it wasn't necessary. I thought it'd been really interesting. Anyway, yeah, Luke shows up, takes the child, and that's when I was bawling through all that. Not pouring tears, but I was teared up with that moment, because the music again played a huge part of it. The build up that he's gone through this adventure, he's taking care of this child as an adopted child basically for a little while, handing him over safely to Luke. And I love the reasoning when Luke says because we've been watching everywhere he goes, he's in danger everywhere, and everyone's trying to get him, not just the bad guys, and he gets himself into trouble, like with the eggs and the spiders and stuff. He can't just he's an infant. You gotta constantly watch a toddler. Right. You gotta watch a toddler. But Luke says the only way he'll be safe is if he's fully trained. If he trains and learns.
Oh yeah, otherwise he's going to be hunted by everyone forever, right? Because people know Yoda. People remember Yoda. It wasn't that long ago in the storyline, Yeah. Like, and if you see one of Yoda's people, you're going to be all like, okay, well, he's either going to be a Jedi and he's going to kill all of us, or I can use him for my nefarious purposes. There's no one not no one, but there's not very many people in the galaxy that are just going to leave him alone.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure. Yeah. It was cool. I think all the emotions connected, everything worked, and a lot of people are frustrated. Well, what are they going to do with Mandalorian now? Because they got another 2 seasons, I think, scheduled. The Mandalorian series wasn't about Grogu. It was about the Mandalorian. This was a huge arc.
2-season arc, yep.
Yeah, it's been
observed. Well, I'm sure Grogu will come back at some point, assuming the series goes on. He'll come back.
I think just as a cameo, or maybe he'll go on some more adventures, settle this Darksaber crap, and then just end up cruising back to wherever Luke has the temple going
the
on.
new Jedi temple.
Just hang out here. Who cares? Yeah. It was very satisfying, left on a great note. It had a very E.T. moment. Did you notice that? Like watching everyone in tears. It cut to each person one individually watching Luke walk off with, and we didn't talk about the R2 moment, but it was also awesome. And then go in, and then the door closes on the elevator, just like E.T.'s door closing before it takes off. I was like, oh. I just want to know if an X-wing has a baby seat in it. I don't, because he has to strap in.
It does have a second seat, right? They have second seats in there.
I don't remember. The other comment about R2 was that it's possible that Grogu noted or maybe remembered R2 from the temple. He
yeah, that's very possible.
And Kevin Smith, this was one of the things that broke him up when R2 popped in there. R2 for the audience was the window into the Star Wars universe. That innocence of that feisty, fun little loving droid is the childhood captivation for the audience back in '77.
Yeah,
where there was a hesitation. Grogu, even with permission and Mandalorian sending him off, there was a hesitation there. He's still scared. He's still nervous. He's still a baby. But he looked up, and it wasn't until R2 came in and popped in and then leaned over and looked at him. Now suddenly he felt safe. And this is my one complaint that I didn't feel like it landed. The whole point of the Mandalorian's background was the whole thing, how he doesn't trust droids, the battle droids, killed his family and everything as a child. I wish that had hit home harder, that he was fighting full on the most menacing, scariest droids possible. He didn't seem to suffer any PTSD like he did when they were hammering in the first season, the armor and stuff, and he had any flashbacks. I wish they had added a little bit of that element into that final battle.
That's true. They really could have. I guess they considered that story arc wrapped at the end of the first season, but I actually think you're right. They actually may have missed an opportunity to really explore that. But
that would have been. There's no better droid to have that pay off than the Dark Trooper battle. So, yeah, that's the only thing I thought was a little bit of a missed opportunity. And if they even thought of that, it was not shown. And I don't even need flashbacks, but just even that emotion. It was just a tough villain for him. Anyway. Right. Yeah, he took off, and then we have the credits, and then Boba Fett flying in to
another series, the 45th series that they're planning to do for Disney Plus.
Yeah, and not announced in last week's all the announcements with
which is cool. John Favreau said he asked them not to announce it, and that was the right thing to do. To be honest, they had plenty of announcements, and this was a fun way to announce it.
I wish they had attributed it to Jeremy Bullock. I mean, they maybe didn't have time to throw that in because it was literally like a day.
Yeah, it was right before, and that they're locked by then. They have to have it ready for distribution. Yeah.
So that's the only shame. That can be something that can be done later if it ever is released physically. Yeah. But it was good. But Boba Fett goes back, takes out Bib Fortuna, who survived. Bib Fortuna was on the sail barge. From everything I remember, he was there. And then,
that scene was really funny for me. I laughed out loud because they kill everyone and then they sit on the throne and pose for the camera, and I'm all like, what is going on here? What is happening? Are you the king of something now, or like? I really don't understand what's happening.
Maybe all this Darksaber stuff has got him thinking, like, you know what, I can claim something too.
I don't know. It seemed a little cheesy, but that's fine. I mean, it's like, okay, cool.
It's splash page. It felt to me like the end of Conan. Conan's like, here, he sees it. He won the adventure. Let's see him on the throne. And now, and there's going to be a future tale. And he's going to tell more stories about him. And now we're getting the Book of Fett. And I like that. I think it's kind of funny that Bib Fortuna was totally milking the established power from the throne on Tatooine by Jabba the Hutt. But it raised a lot of questions. We can talk about that another time. What power was that? Is he going to be in charge of the trade routes and stuff? Like Jabba had that influence in the Clone Wars, all that stuff. Who knows? Doesn't matter at this point.
Who knows? It's just, I don't even know what it was. That was such a weird scene to be honest. I was just like, okay, whatever.
I thought it was funny that there was only like 5 people in his court. It's like we've already seen Tatooine is like run down. There's no one in Mos Eisley. The bar's like empty, and Bib Fortuna is still like playing King of the Castle with like 5 people.
Well, that's what I was saying. What does this get Boba Fett? Does this accomplish him anything? Like, I don't know.
That's why I think there's something to that. I think there is some kind of a gangster world that position ruled. I think it's low run or one that's run down. But you notice, I noticed the second time watching it, you notice he struts in and he stands right on top of the Rancor drop box, the drop pit thing.
Yeah.
Casual and comfortable, and it's not that there needs to be a Rancor in there, but it's still a trap door. He doesn't care. It's freaking Boba Fett. He's like, what are you gonna do? I won.
I like how the one slave gets saved by the assassin. That's sort of funny. It's like, sure, fine. Everyone's talked about how horrible this scene is and anti-feminist for like decades, and it's like, fine, whatever, just shoot her, let her go. Like, it was just a nod to, fine, here you go, fans, for all you people worried about that stuff.
Yeah. I loved it. I loved this season. I liked it better than the first season. I had issues with each episode. I had some problems here and there with this one, but overall,
I loved the cameos better this season. I still think the first season's story arc is more succinct and tight and pays off really well. This one, that they have a lot more fun with the cameos, and I like that a lot more, and that was awesome.
The Easter eggs and everything, it seems a lot more, it seems a lot bigger. Earlier, there were a lot subtle, teeny little things here and there, like, which droid was bartending, EV-99 was bartending the Tatooine, stuff like that. This one's like, here's Boba Fett, here's Luke Skywalker, it's like...
Here's Ahsoka, here's Bo-Katan.
Yeah. And it's not that they need to bring everything in to make it big, but it was a lot juicier, but it was still competently done. That wasn't just thrown in there for the sake of it. And that's why people have said, if they had just started off with a Luke Skywalker series, no one would care. A Boba Fett series, they talked about that for years.
Right.
In a movie, no, everyone's like, oh, I don't need to see that. But now, with this setup, now everyone's excited about let's see.
The Mandalorian was done solidly. They introduced a bunch of characters, which allows them to spiral out into other parts of the universe. I told you before, I'm a little concerned they're doing too much all at once. Like, they've announced so many things, but if they do it well, that's fine. I mean, they had a bunch of Marvel series on Netflix. I still think the Marvel Netflix series are way better than any of the movies by far. It's not even close. So if they can do the same with the Star Wars ones, but even then, there were only a handful of them. There weren't. I counted it up, but it was like 10 or 12 series they've announced for Disney Plus.
Yeah,
it's a lot. So I'm a little worried about that, but we'll see. They may be cashing in too quick because they're all like, "Oh, we killed the movie universe with Rian Johnson, so now we got to capitalize somehow. Hey, this Mandalorian thing was really good. Now let's cash in on that." Like, I'm worried that that's what they're doing.
But it was, like I said, it was done in capable and caring, loving hands. And I will argue that Rian Johnson is not a real Star Wars fan. And he did what he wanted to do. Kathleen Kennedy didn't. It seems like she's burnt out as a producer. She's like, whatever, just make the movies. Let's keep it going.
Yeah.
Disney, but like now it's with Filoni and Favreau, they care. They care passionately. And Filoni's been in the game for a long, or Favreau. No, Filoni has been in the game a long time doing, right?
He's been in the Star Wars game a while.
Since Clone Wars and everything. And
Favreau's pretty new. But a lot of people have been saying too, Favreau has the same kind of spirit of filmmaking as George Lucas. And I think that's right. Like, the first Iron Man movie was a lot of fun. I hate the Iron Man character because he's a turd, but he's supposed to be a turd. And Favreau has a lot of fun with that, and he ended up spawning, the Marvel universe.
Absolutely,
he's a good, fun storyteller. Like, he knows what to do, and so I think him and Filoni have just done amazing stuff.
And he knows how to capture the heart of the characters and of the story, and that's what this series has done. And I trust that. And they announced today, they're the ones that are running the Boba Fett story. So
yeah, they're executive producers.
I have faith. So. Anyways, anything else you want to say, Zach?
No, let's wrap it up.
Thanks for joining, and thanks for being a part of it and being excited to explore this even further. And thanks for watching. Watch Mandalorian. If you watch this without watching it, I don't know what your interests are.
Spoiler alert, from the beginning.
Yeah. But anyway, thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time on Saints on Cinema. Thanks, guys.